Have you ever wondered why some men seem to forge a magnetic connection almost effortlessly, while others, no matter how hard they try, can't leave an impression that lasts beyond the first chat? I'll let you in on a secret. It's not about luck, looks, or magic. It's pure, applied psychology. There's a chasm between how a young man tries to impress and how an experienced man builds a real connection. The young man seeks immediate approval. The mature man cultivates intrigue. The young man gives away his time and attention without a filter. The mature man turns it into something valuable, reward. Studies on modern relationship dynamics reveal an uncomfortable truth. A significant number of people feel trapped in cycles of emotional dependency, turning what should be a healthy bond into a source of anxiety. What if I told you there's a method to navigate these waters? To build a bond that is not only strong, but magnetically attractive? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm not just going to list, but break down 7 psychological techniques, backed by decades of research and perfected by men who understand the game of human connection. I'll reveal everything from the powerful Zeigarnik Effect to the subtle art of asymmetrical reciprocity. By the end of this video, you won't just understand these tactics. You'll know exactly how to apply them to completely transform the way you connect with others. These aren't mere seduction tactics. They are master keys to unlocking a level of emotional fascination that most people don't even know exists. Let's start with a question. Why can't you stop thinking about the cliffhanger ending of that series you were binge watching? Or why do you remember a conversation that was cut short more clearly than 5 that ended naturally? The answer has a name: the Zeigarnik Effect. Discovered in the 1920s by psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, this principle is incredibly simple, yet its effect is profound. Zeigarnik noticed something curious in a restaurant. Waiters perfectly remembered the orders for tables that hadn't paid yet, but the moment the bill was settled, the details vanished. Her research confirmed that our brain tends to remember incomplete or interrupted tasks much better than completed ones. When we start something, a cognitive tension is created, a kind of mental itch that is only relieved by completion. If that conclusion is postponed, the brain keeps that task on a constant loop, generating recurring thoughts and a craving for closure. An inexperienced man exhausts topics. He sends messages until there's nothing left to say, believing that more is better. A mature man, however, understands the power of the pause. He is the master of the conversational cliffhanger. Here's the practical application. In the middle of a fascinating conversation, just when the connection is at its peak, he'll say something like, "That reminds me of something incredible that happened to me last week. It has to do with an unexpected trip and a lesson that changed my perspective. But you know what? I'll tell you later, because you just got me thinking about what you mentioned before." Or, at the end of a wonderful date, instead of stretching it to exhaustion, he cuts it short at a high point with a promise. "I'd love to keep talking about this, but I have an early commitment. There's so much more I want to know about that project of yours. Let's pick this up soon." This deliberate act of leaving a loop open is a masterstroke. It's not rudeness, it's strategy. He leaves, but he plants a seed in the other person's mind. That seed, the incomplete story, the unanswered question, will germinate in his absence. The other person's mind, thanks to the Zeigarnik Effect, will return to that conversation again and again, trying to complete it. He doesn't need to be present to occupy space in their thoughts. He has created a mental tenet that works for him. The Stoic sage Epictetus said, "Not everything must be revealed. Control of information is power." A mature man doesn't show all his cards in the first hand. He understands the mystery isn't in what is hidden, but in what is partially revealed. He masters the art of the unfinished to ensure that long after he's gone, the conversation about him continues. At least inside the other person's mind. Has a specific smell, like rain on asphalt, ever transported you to a vivid memory? Or how a song can evoke a cascade of emotions linked to a person or a moment? That's not a coincidence. It's an emotional anchor in action. This concept, with roots in the classical conditioning of the famous psychologist Ivan Pavlov, is one of the most subtle and powerful tools in an experienced man's arsenal. Neuroscience confirms that our brain is an association machine. It unconsciously links sensory stimuli, a scent, a sound, a texture, with emotional states. Once that link or anchor is established, Re-experiencing the stimulus can automatically trigger the associated emotion. The inexperienced man focuses on what he says. The mature man focuses on how he makes the other person feel and the sensory traces he leaves behind. He doesn't just create a good moment, he tags it with a unique sensory anchor. Let's look at the practical application. This isn't about grand gestures, but subtlety and consistency. First, the olfactory anchor. He doesn't wear the trendy cologne that everyone else has. He opts for a distinctive niche fragrance. He applies it subtly, not to announce his arrival, but to be a pleasant discovery in close proximity. Second, the auditory anchor. It could be a genuine laugh, a phrase he repeats in moments of complicity. Here's something else, or a type of music he chooses for important moments. Imagine that whenever they have a deep conversation, soft jazz is playing in the background. Over time, the simple sound of a saxophone in a cafe could bring a smile to her face and a memory of his presence. Third, the kinesthetic anchor. It's the way he naturally places a hand on the small of her back to guide her through a crowd, or a light touch on the arm to emphasize a funny point. It's not invasive, it's protective and comforting. That gesture, repeated in moments of positive emotion, becomes an anchor of security. The mature man uses these anchors to build a sensory landscape around himself. He knows that words are forgotten, but the emotions associated with the sensory stimulus endure. His goal is for the outside world to start working in his favor. When she smells a similar fragrance or hears that song, her brain will activate the emotional folder he has created. It's a way of being present even in his absence. Think about a slot machine. It's one of the most addictive creations ever invented. Why? Not because you always win. In fact, you almost always lose. Its addictive power lies in its unpredictability. You never know when the prize will come. That uncertainty, that intermittent hope, prize will come. That uncertainty, that intermittent hope, is what keeps people pulling the lever. This is the principle of variable reinforcement studied extensively by psychologist B.F. Skinner. Skinner discovered that behaviors are reinforced more strongly when the reward is not constant or predictable. A predictable reward is taken for granted and loses its impact. A variable one creates anticipation and desire. In relationships, impact. A variable one creates anticipation and desire. In relationships, the reward is attention and affection. He gives everything, all the time. He responds instantly. He gives everything, all the time. He responds instantly. He is always available. It's functional, boring. The mature man, in contrast, operates like the slot machine. He is a master of calculated unpredictability. This isn't about playing hurtful games, but about varying the rhythm and intensity of his attention in a way that reflects a full, independent life. Here's how it's applied. In communication, his pattern is varied. Sometimes he responds instantly and engages in a fluid conversation. Other times, he might take hours or even until the next day, not with an excuse, but with a natural response that picks up the conversation. His reply becomes a prize, not a guarantee. In planning, he breaks the monotony. Instead of the predictable Saturday dinner, he might suggest a spontaneous visit to a gallery on a Tuesday afternoon. Another weekend, he might be busy with his own projects, communicating that his life is complete and that time with him is valuable. In affection, he also applies variability. He can be intensely attentive on one date and more reserved on the next, not in a cold way, but like someone who is also in his own world. This contrast makes the moments of high attention much more potent. This variable reinforcement keeps the other person in a slight, positive imbalance, making each interaction more exciting. He is not a constant source of attention, but a source of intermittent peak moments. This inspires the other person to invest more mentally and emotionally, and it is in that anticipation that a deeper connection is forged. If these first few techniques have already opened your eyes to a new dimension of attraction psychology, take a second to show your support with a like. It's a signal to me that you find this kind of deep analysis valuable, and it motivates me to keep creating content that deconstructs the keys to genuine, powerful connection. Let's continue. Have you ever, after a simple conversation, found yourself daydreaming about future plans that include that person? If so, you've been the subject of a very elegant technique, future projection. Cognitive psychology teaches us that the brain doesn't clearly distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real memory. When we emotionally imagine a future scenario, we create memories of the future. This process makes us feel more attached to that possibility and to the person who inspired it. The inexperienced man speaks in conditionals. It would be cool if we went. Someday. His language is tentative. The mature man speaks in presumptions. He doesn't ask for permission to enter the other person's future. He includes her in it naturally and attractively. Its application is a subtle verbal art. Instead of asking, is a subtle verbal art. Instead of asking, would you like to go to that concert next month? When we go. This month. When we go, we have to stop by that tapas bar I told you about first. You're going to love it. If she mentions when we go, we have to stop by that tapas bar I told you about first. You're going to love it. If she mentions she's always wanted to visit Italy, it doesn't say, Italy. When I take you to Florence, I'll show you a hidden trattoria that's not in the guidebooks. The Casio to Florence. I'll show you a hidden trattoria that's not in the guidebooks. The Casio e Pepe they make, they will change your life. What he's doing is building a bridge to the future and making the other person cross it mentally. He doesn't talk about commitment prematurely, which would be clumsy. Instead, he plants small seeds of a future us in the field of imagination. Each time he uses this technique, he invites the other person to invest in a shared vision. Imagine a song that stays at the same note and volume for 10 minutes. No matter how pleasant, it would become monotonous. Now, think of a symphony. It moves between loud and soft, fast and slow passages. It's that dynamic, that contrast, that makes it captivating. Relationships are no different. Emotional contrast theory suggests that we judge our experiences in relation to those that preceded them. A moment of calm is more appreciated after one of intensity. This back and forth between emotional peaks and valleys not only prevents monotony but intensifies the experience. The inexperienced man often falls into one extreme. He's either the clown who's always joking, or the tortured poet who lives in exhausting intensity. Both are one-dimensional. The mature man is an emotional orchestra conductor. He understands the power of rhythm and dynamics, and he intentionally explores the emotional spectrum. During a date, he can guide the conversation from funny anecdotes that provoke laughter to deeper territory with a question like, "What's a dream you had as a kid that you still carry with you?" He demonstrates strength and stoicism, projecting a calm and secure image. But he is also capable of showing vulnerability at the right moment. He understands the value of shared silence. In the car on the way back from an energetic event, instead of filling the air with chatter, he might put on soft music and enjoy a comfortable quiet. This use of contrast creates a rich and exciting emotional experience. It makes time with him unpredictable and valuable. We live in an era of curated perfection on social media. In this sea of unreality, many try to present themselves as a flawless product. They believe they must hide every flaw to be desirable. But the mature man knows the truth. Perfection isn't attractive. It's intimidating. This is where the Pratfall effect comes into play. Research, like that of psychologist Elliot Aronson, showed that when a person already perceived as competent makes a small mistake, their attractiveness increases rather than decreases. Why? Because the blunder humanizes us. It makes us more relatable, more approachable. It breaks the barrier of intimidation. The insecure young man hides his flaws. The mature man understands that his imperfections, presented with confidence, are not weaknesses. They are connection tools. For example, at dinner, he might struggle with chopsticks and say with a smile, "I've negotiated complex contracts, but my war with chopsticks is a battle I continue to lose. I'll have to use the fork of surrender." Another way is to admit a quirk. "I'm warning you, I'm terribly impatient in traffic. It's my only useless superpower." He might also share an anecdote about a silly mistake from his past and what he learned. This not only humanizes him, but also demonstrates growth. The man who uses this technique communicates something powerful. "I am so confident in my strengths that I am not afraid to show my small weaknesses." This confidence is magnetic. In any interaction, there is an unwritten law, reciprocity. Social psychology tells us that when someone gives us something, we feel the need to return the favor. Most people operate on symmetrical reciprocity. You buy me a coffee, I'll buy you one next time. But there's a more powerful form. Asymmetrical reciprocity. Instead of giving gifts, he gives knowledge. If she mentions she's having trouble with her online business, he doesn't offer money. Instead of superficial compliments, he gives perspective. He listens to her problems and, Instead of generic advice, shares a story from his life. He shares experiences, not just things. Instead of taking her to expense places, he introduces her to worlds she didn't know. When a man gives this kind of asymmetrical value, the balance of reciprocity tips. This generates gratitude and respect, positioning the man not just as a partner, but as a source of growth. We've covered the 7 techniques that emotionally intelligent men use to forge deep connections. But now, I must warn you of the biggest mistake, trying to use them all at once, like a checklist, in a forced and inauthentic way. The true art is not mechanical application, but natural integration into your personality. This is not about being a manipulator, but a man who understands human psychology. That's why, if you want to take your social intelligence to the next level, subscribe and turn on notifications, because in my next video, I'll reveal the 9 secret social skills mature men use to make women silently obsess over them. If you found value in this analysis, give it a like and share it. Remember, these tools are powerful. Use them to build bridges, not cages. Use them with integrity, with respect, and above all, to become the most conscious and magnetic version of yourself.